We are opening the files today on a narrative that is both a spectacular story of American success and an unimaginable tragedy, the story of Selena Quintanilla.
Right. She was the star known simply as Selena, the Queen of Tejano music.
Yeah.
And her life was suddenly and just brutally cut short on March 31st, 1995. She was only 23 years old.
In that event, it didn't just generate headlines, it caused a genuine seismic shift in American culture.
It really did.
Yeah.
Especially within the vast and, growing Latino community. The shock was immediate, it was profound, and it exposed these cultural realities that the mainstream media had, for the most part, largely ignored up until that moment.
Our goal in this exploration of the material is to conduct a thorough analysis of the sources.
Yeah.
We want to do that with the sensitivity and respect that this topic absolutely requires.
Hmm.
We're going to trace the full arc, her stunning rise, the disturbing details of the betrayal that led to her murder, the facts of the crime, the legal aftermath, and crucially, the unprecedented and lasting cultural and commercial legacy that her death cemented.
And we're relying entirely on the detailed documentation that's been provided. This covers everything from the perpetrator's calculated manipulations to the precise mechanics of the shooting itself.
And the 9-hour police standoff that followed.
Exactly. The high-profile trial and, of course, the massive public outpouring of grief.
You know, when you look back at the historical comparisons, and the sources are full of them, they really speak volumes.
They do.
The public reaction was compared, in terms of its intensity and scope, to the deaths of major political figures like John F. Kennedy or music legends like John Lennon.
And we want to clarify for you why her passing resonated with that kind of historical weight. Why, for so many people in the U.S., March 31st, 1995, truly was what some media outlets at the time called Black Friday.
So, to really understand the tragedy, we first need to understand Selena's unique path to stardom.
It starts in Lake Jackson, Texas. She was born there on April 16, 1971. And her career, it wasn't born out of some glossy marketing plan or anything like that. It was born out of financial survival.
Exactly. Her father, Abraham Quintanilla Jr., was just instrumental. He was a former musician himself, and after the family faced this devastating financial hardship, they were evicted from their home during the Texas oil bust of 1982, he organized the family band.
Selena y los Dinos.
Right, and it was their crucial source of income. This wasn't just a hobby, it was the family's lifeline.
And this family dedication, it immediately put Selena in a very unusual position. The genre she excelled in, Tejano music, which is this vibrant, driving blend of Mexican cumbia and polka with American influences like R&B and country.
It was so male-dominated back then.
Intensely male-dominated in the 1980s, but her talent was just undeniable.
She broke through those barriers so rapidly. She won Female Vocalist of the Year at the Tejano Music Awards in 1987, and by 1989 she had signed with Capital EMI Latin. That was a huge step toward crossover success.
She was a powerhouse, just beloved for her music and for her identity as a proudly Mexican-American woman.
And as her fame accelerated, she drew the attention of Yolanda Saldivar. And the dynamic that developed between them is really the core of this tragedy. It's a misplaced, almost terrifying level of trust.
Saldivar was originally a registered nurse from San Antonio, and she entered Selena's orbit in 1991. What's so fascinating, and it's often overlooked, is that the sources note she initially disliked Selena.
Really? Why was that?
Because Selena kept winning awards over the other Tejano musicians that Saldivar preferred.
Huh. But that obviously changed.
It changed very quickly after Saldivar attended one of her concerts. She became what the sources call an ardent fan. But that fandom very, very quickly turned into this relentless business pursuit.
She was highly motivated.
Incredibly. She pursued Abraham Quintanilla Jr. aggressively, leaving up to 15 messages, though she later tried to claim it was only 3, insisting that he let her start a fan club.
And by June of 1991, she got her wish. She became the founder and president of the fan club out of San Antonio.
And this was not a casual role. Members were paying a $22 fee, and they were expecting merchandise in return: T-shirts, fact sheets, interviews, notifications about concerts.
So Saldivar was directly handling cash flow and fan interactions from the very beginning.
Yes, and she appeared efficient, devoted. Her eagerness to impress Selena was noted by many. One person observed that if Selena said, "jump," Saldivar would jump 3 times.
And that kind of commitment, it eventually led her to quit her nursing career to manage the fan club full-time.
It did. And this devotion, it earned her the ultimate trust from the Quintanilla family. When Selena launched her two major Selena Etc. boutiques, one in Corpus Christi and one in San Antonio in 1994, Seldivar was promoted.
She became the manager of both.
Yes, and it's hard to even put into words the financial access she was granted. The Quintanillas, they were focused on the music production side at Q Productions, so they extended this immense trust.
She had permission to write and cash checks, full access to bank accounts for both the fan club and the boutiques.
And even authorization to use Selena's American Express card for company expenses.
It was an arrangement built on just blind faith, and it was so dangerously vulnerable.
And the warning signs, they were not subtle at all. They emerged almost as quickly as she was given that power.
Her devotion crossed into something else.
An obsession. Staff reported that Seldivar's room was covered in Selena posters, pictures, and candles. She would constantly play Selena videotapes for any guests.
And crucially, she started telling employees she wanted to be like Selena. That's a classic sign of, dissolving boundaries.
He grew possessive, too. She was trying to isolate Selena by distancing her from other trusted employees. The staff at Selena Etc. complained extensively, describing Seldivar as two-faced and unstable.
They felt she was abusive and manipulative when Selena wasn't around.
Right, and this control, this emotional instability, it quickly bled into financial mismanagement. By late 1994, the boutiques were running out of cash. They couldn't pay their bills.
And Seldivar had drastically cut the staff, right? From something like 38 employees down to 14.
Yes, often firing people she personally disliked or, anyone who questioned her authority.
And then came the external proof of the fraud.
The calls and letters from fans.
Angry fans. Abraham Quintanilla Jr. started getting these calls and letters from people who had paid their $22 membership fee and received absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all. No T-shirts, no memorabilia. The fan club, run by Seldivar, was failing to deliver on its promises, but the money was gone.
The investigation just confirmed the scale of the financial betrayal. Seldivar had embezzled over $60,000.
Using forged checks. And they were drawn from both the fan club and the boutique accounts. To try and hide the fan club theft, she had opened the account using her sister's name, Maria Alita.
So when Abraham finally confronted her with the evidence on March 9, 1995 at Q Productions, Selena and her sister Suzette were there too. He noted that the handwriting on those Maria Alita checks perfectly matched Seldivar's.
And her reaction was so telling.
She didn't deny it.
She mostly stared. She alternated between being, as they described, emotional at times and at other times just cool as ice.
Yeah.
It just suggests this deeply disturbed detachment from reality.
That was the moment Abraham immediately banned her from any further contact. But here is the central, painful, tragic element of this whole narrative.
Selena hesitated.
Selena herself hesitated to fully sever the connection. Her termination was put on hold. She needed those stolen records.
She needed Seldivar's bank statements, the tax documents, all the financial evidence to clean up the mess and prepare for the upcoming tax season.
And she also, perhaps, still felt Seldivar was necessary for the planned expansion of her clothing line into Mexico.
So it was this conflict between professional necessity and a profound emotional reluctance. She couldn't believe the person she had trusted so completely was capable of this level of calculated deception.
And that professional requirement, the need for the very evidence of the theft, it provided the narrow, fatal window that Seldivar needed to execute her final, desperate plan.
The moment Seldivar was exposed, the sources show this terrifying immediate pivot from financial desperation to premeditated violence. This wasn't a sudden rage. The preparation was chillingly methodical.
The timeline confirms this. On March 10th, Selena removes Seldivar's name from the boutique accounts. That's the formal start of the termination process.
The very next day, March 11th, Seldivar went to a gun shop in San Antonio, and she purchased a 5-shot Taurus Model 85 revolver, chambered in .38 special.
And crucially, she didn't buy standard ammunition. She bought 5 hollow-point bullets.
We have to emphasize why this matters. Hollow-point bullets are explicitly designed to expand upon impact.
To maximize tissue damage and lethality?
Precisely. She told the clerk she needed the weapon for protection as an in-home nurse because of threats.
This action, less than 48 hours after being caught embezzling $60,000, it just strongly supports the prosecution's later argument of premeditation.
There was a brief pause, though. She did attempt to return the gun on March 15th, claiming her father gave her a different one. But then she repurchased that same revolver on March 27th.
It sounds like a psychological back and forth, not a real change of heart.
I think that's right. And Abraham Quintanilla later voiced his belief that Seldivar had 4 failed attempts to commit the murder between that confrontation and March 34.
And these attempts, the sources suggest, are often derailed by sheer bad luck on Saldivar's part, heavy traffic, or the constant presence of Selena's husband, Chris Perez.
Or Selena just being mobbed by fans,
Yeah.
creating too many witnesses for a clean execution of the crime.
It's a terrifying accumulation of near misses.
It is. So then we arrive at March 30. Saldivar, having briefly traveled out of state and then returned to Corpus Christi, checked into room 158 at the Days Inn Motel. She contacted Selena with what Abraham believed was this manipulative, desperate, new alibi.
She claimed she had been raped in Monterrey, Mexico.
Exactly. And Selena, torn between her family's command to cut ties and her own sympathy, she agreed to meet her the next morning, March 31.
To address the supposed crisis and critically retrieve the remaining financial records.
Right. And Chris Perez was reluctant for her to go alone. He sensed danger.
So, on the morning of March 31st, 1995, at approximately 7:30 a.m., Selena arrived at the Days Inn, room 158.
Their first stop was Doctors Regional Hospital. Saldivar needed to establish credibility for her rape claim. But the medical staff noted she showed clear symptoms of depression. But the story itself was weak.
And a nurse, Carla Anthony, she advised Saldivar that she needed to go to San Antonio for a proper examination, since the alleged rape happened outside the country.
And Selena became visibly angry in that waiting room. The sources indicate this was because Saldivar had initially claimed to be bleeding profusely, but now told the staff she had only bled a little.
So Selena realized the story was almost certainly fabricated.
A fabrication to coerce her back into Saldivar's presence. The drive back to the motel was tense.
And Selena told Saldivar they needed to separate for a while to avoid upsetting her father. She was essentially confirming the termination was imminent.
Right. And once they were back in room 158, Chris Perez called Selena's cell phone, reminding her she was late for a recording session at Q Productions.
And Selena assured him she was taking care of one last item of the business and that she would be there soon.
That was the last time he or anyone outside of that motel room heard her voice.
The final, fatal confrontation began shortly after that. Motel guests overheard shouting. Selena was demanding the financial papers and stating unequivocally that Saldivar could no longer be trusted.
And Selena, exasperated, tried to speed things along by forcefully dumping Saldivar's satchel onto the bed.
And this impulsive action was the catalyst. It exposed the 5-shot Taurus Model 85 revolver lying inside.
At 11:48 a.m., the argument escalated as Selena tried to flee the room, and Saldivar aimed the revolver and fired a single shot.
The resulting injury was catastrophic, almost instantly fatal.
The hollow-point billet struck Selena in the lower right shoulder. It passed through her chest cavity, shattered her collarbone, and most critically, it severed the right subclavian artery, a major blood vessel.
And the sources highlight the terrifying precision of that wound. Doctors later determined that if the bullet had been just 1 millimeter higher or lower, the injuries would have been substantially less severe.
Perhaps even survivable.
But the path it took guaranteed her death. She lost, as the reports say, virtually all the blood in her body in a matter of minutes.
Which led rapidly to hypovolemic shock.
And Selena, bleeding profusely, she fled the room and ran, the equivalent of a football field. A horrific blood trail measured at 392 feet all the way toward the lobby.
Screaming, help me, I've been shot.
And the reports confirmed that Saldivar chased her part of the way, screaming at her, calling her a bitch.
She collapsed in the lobby at 11:49 a.m. Her final words, delivered to the hotel staff, they identified her killer and the location.
Yolanda.
Room 158. Paramedics arrived immediately, and she was rushed to Corpus Christi Memorial Hospital. The medical team there undertook what were described as heroic efforts.
They opened her chest, administered multiple blood transfusions, tried heart massage, but the massive blood loss meant her veins had already collapsed.
Selena Quintanilla Perez was pronounced dead at 1:05 p.m. from cardiac arrest caused by severe blood loss. The sheer violence and the speed of it, it's just difficult to comprehend.
Immediately after the shooting, Saldivar walked out of the motel, got into her red pickup truck, and tried to flee the Days Inn parking lot.
And there was immediate concern among the police that she might be heading straight for Q Productions.
To target Abraham Quintanilla Jr., who had exposed her.
Exactly. Fortunately, a responding police officer spotted her, cut off her truck, and ordered her to surrender.
But instead, Saldivar picked up the murder weapon, placed it against her right temple, and threatened to commit suicide.
This initiated one of the longest, most dramatic standoffs in Corpus Christi's history. It lasted over 9 hours.
And the situation required calling in specialized personnel, a SWAT team, the FBI Crisis Negotiation Unit.
And the negotiators, including Larry Young and Isaac Valencia, they managed to run a telephone line to the truck to establish communication.
And what was her story then?
Initially, Saldivar maintained the gun had simply gone off accidentally. She said she intended to shoot herself, but only after Selena had tried to leave.
Which is an account that conveniently shifts the blame away from premeditation.
Of course. And it's a story she would maintain throughout the entire legal process.
All the while, the scene outside the motel just became this tragic spectacle. Hundreds of devastated fans, having heard the news, gathered near the police line,
Just weeping openly as the hours dragged on, desperate for justice.
Finally, after more than 9 grueling hours of negotiation, Saldivar surrendered to police and was immediately charged with murder.
The public outrage was just explosive.
The immediate reaction really underscored the security risks. District Attorney Carlos Valdez quickly argued for a high bond, convincing the judge to raise it from $100,000 to $500,000.
And this was necessary because of the overwhelming calls for vigilante justice. The threats were constant.
I mean, the Nueces County Jail was inundated, and there were reports that the Mexican Mafia, a major organized crime syndicate in the Texas prison system, had placed a price on Saldivar's head.
She was a target of immense hatred.
So to guarantee an impartial jury and a safe environment, the trial was moved hundreds of miles away to the Harris County Courthouse in Houston, and it was presided over by Judge Mike Westergren.
The media frenzy that followed was immense. For the Latino population across the hemisphere, this was instantly branded the trial of the century.
It generated the kind of wall-to-wall coverage, even international interest, in places like Europe, Japan, Australia.
That rivaled the then ongoing O.J. Simpson proceedings.
And Saldivar pleaded not guilty, sticking rigidly to the claim that the shooting was accidental. She testified she had only intended to scare Selena or shoot herself.
However, the prosecution, led by Carlos Valdez, presented a very compelling counterargument. They insisted she deliberately killed Selena.
And they focused on the hollow point bullets, the immediate purchase of the weapon right after the embezzlement was exposed.
The fabricated rave story used to lure Selena to the motel.
And the simple fact that Saldivar was trained as a nurse, she would have fully understood the severity and placement of that wound.
The jury deliberation reflected the weight of that evidence and the mood of the community. They deliberated for only 2 hours.
Just 2 hours before finding Yolanda Saldivar guilty of murder on October 23, 1995.
She was subsequently sentenced to life imprisonment. And due to the constant threats from other inmates, often incarcerated fans who were enraged by the loss of their icon Saldivar, was immediately placed in isolation.
Spending 23 hours a day alone in her cell for years. Her earliest eligibility for parole was set for 2025.
And as of earlier this year, March 2025, her first parole petition was in fact denied.
Her next review is scheduled for March 30th, 2030, a day before the 35th anniversary of Selena's death.
There's one last contentious detail from the legal aftermath that drew significant public and historical disapproval.
The murder weapon itself.
Yes. In 2002, 7 years after the trial, a judge ordered the destruction of the Taurus Model 85 revolver. The pieces were melted down and thrown into Corpus Christi Bay.
And fans and historians argued that, regardless of the crime, the artifact was related to this monumental figure in U.S. cultural history. It should have been preserved.
Preserved in a museum as part of the historical record, much like other famous tragic artifacts. The decision to destroy it felt like erasing a painful but necessary part of the narrative.
The speed and scale of the media's reaction to Selena's death were utterly unprecedented for a Latin artist in the United States. It forced a massive, immediate recalibration of how the media viewed the Latino community.
All the major U.S. television networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, interrupted their regular programming.
Which was extraordinary for a non-political figure, and especially for a Latino musician.
And across Texas, radio stations, both Spanish and English language, they played her music nonstop and opened up their phone lines to fans, often broadcasting that raw grief live on the air.
The sheer emotional intensity prompted the historical comparisons we noted earlier. Carlos Lopez of KMIQ 105.1 referred to the day as Black Friday.
And for millions, particularly the 5 million Texans of Mexican descent, as one Anglo-American fan noted, Selena's death was a day of infamy even darker and more evil than the assassination of John F. Kennedy.
To a non-Latino audience, that comparison can feel startling, but it really speaks to Selena's unique position.
She was a cultural icon who was authentically American, born and raised in Texas, who spoke limited Spanish but mastered a genre rooted in Mexican culture.
She symbolized the possibility of achieving the American dream while remaining, proud of her roots. Her death felt like the loss of a collective dream.
The media coverage, often dominating newscasts and front pages. The New York Times ran the story on its front page for 2 consecutive days. It all culminated in one of the most significant media events of the decade.
The People magazine commemorative issue.
Exactly. This was a watershed moment for American publishing. People rushed out a commemorative issue, and they weren't sure how large the demand would be outside of Texas.
Their initial assumption was proven catastrophically wrong.
The issue sold nearly 1 million copies in 2 weeks. It completely sold out the first and second print runs and immediately became a collector's item.
That level of demand was unprecedented in people's history. It provided undeniable empirical proof of the massive yet largely ignored purchasing power and cultural significance of the U.S. Latino demographic.
And that commercial success directly and very quickly led to the launch of People en Español. It forever changed the magazine industry's approach to diversity.
The grief on the ground was monumental. People traveled thousands of miles to Corpus Christi to visit her home, the crime scene at the Days Inn, her boutiques.
The chain-link fence at her house became an immediate, spontaneous shrine. It was just covered in flowers, letters, and mementos.
And the collective vigil was visible even on the roadways. In Corpus Christi and along Interstate 37 leading up from Mexico, drivers turned on their headlights in silent mass solidarity.
The tragedy became, as Antonio Lopez summarized, a bookmark in time for so many people.
However, this outpouring of grief immediately highlighted some sharp cultural and racial divisions in the U.S.
It really did. While the Latino community mourned a symbol, many Anglo-Americans were questioning the fuss over the death of a singer they had never heard of.
And this led to cultural confrontations and dismissive backlash that was published in newspapers.
Ramiro Burr, a prominent music journalist, he attributed the widespread non-Hispanic lack of understanding to a language barrier.
Meaning not just Spanish versus English, but a barrier of cultural context.
Right, they simply lacked the framework to understand her symbolic importance.
And we saw this cultural ignorance played out in real time. In the 1997 biopic, there's a scene where a store manager dismissively asks, "Who's Selena?"
And while Anglo-American viewers sometimes dismiss this as over-dramatized Hollywood license, Latino fans emphatically asserted that this cultural ignorance happens all the time. It demonstrated how marginalized their community felt by the mainstream media's focus.
The tragedy even seemed to cast a shadow over related events. Sources mentioned 2 linked deaths in California that occurred shortly afterward.
A drag queen who was planning to dress as Selena was killed by a car, and an actress who auditioned for the role in the biopic was later strangled. These events just deepened the sense of collective tragedy surrounding her legacy.
Political recognition followed the cultural shockwave. Then, Texas Governor and future U.S. President George W. Bush declared her birthday, April 16th, Selena Day, in Texas.
He acknowledged that she represented the essence of South Texas culture. Even President Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton sent a letter of condolence to her husband, Chris Perez.
But the media reaction wasn't uniformly respectful. It also sparked one of the biggest controversies in media that year.
The actions of shock jock Howard Stern.
The outrage over Stern was immense. He mocked her murder, her burial, and her music on air, claiming dismissively that, quote, "Alvin and the Chipmunks have more soul."
And to add insult to injury, he played her songs interspersed with the sound of gunfire in the background.
The Latino community responded with fury. The League of United Latin American Citizens organized significant advertiser boycotts against Stern's show.
And the legal response was serious, too. An arrest warrant for disorderly conduct was issued for Stern in Texas.
The backlash forced him to respond, which he did by making an on-air statement in Spanish to apologize. A move that was criticized as inadequate and insincere, but it demonstrated the sheer political and economic power the organized response now commanded.
Moving to the music business, the tragedy had an immediate, devastating, and irreversible impact on the entire Tejano genre.
Before 1995, Tejano music was one of the most popular Latin music subgenres. It accounted for 52% of all Latin music sales, and Selena was the undisputed leader of its 1990s revival.
Major labels, EMI, Sony, Warner, they had invested heavily, signing Tejano artists to compete in this suddenly booming market.
But when Selena was murdered, the market confidence just evaporated instantly.
Many major record companies quickly abandoned their contracted Tejano artists, retreating from the genre completely. Its popularity waned significantly, and by the mid-2000s, U.S. radio stations were switching from Tejano programming to broader regional Mexican formats.
And today, Selena remains the best-selling Tejano artist of all time. She continues to outsell living musicians, which just illustrates the vacuum she left behind.
Commercially, however, her personal sales exploded. Record stores sold out of her albums in hours.
EMI Latin had to rush ship 500,000 units in the 2 weeks following her death. Her 1994 album, Amor Prohibido, saw a staggering 520% increase in sales in the week she was murdered.
And this commercial surge culminated with the posthumous release of her highly anticipated crossover album, Dreaming of You.
The album she'd been recording when she died, the one intended to launch her fully into the English-language pop charts.
When Dreaming of You was released months later, the demand was unlike anything seen before. It sold 175,000 copies on the day of release, a record for a female vocalist at the time.
In its first week, it sold 331,000 units.
And that made her only the third female artist in history, after Janet Jackson and Mariah Carey, to sell over 300,000 units in a single week.
But the true landmark was its debut position. Dreaming of You debuted at #1 on the U.S. Billboard 200 chart,
Which made Selena the first Latino artist and the first solo artist posthumously to achieve that feat.
Today, it remains the best-selling Latin album of all time in the U.S., a monumental achievement that was realized only after her death, demonstrating the full, tragically unrealized potential of her crossover appeal.
The tributes, they continue to this day. The public viewing of her casket at Bayfront Auditorium drew an estimated 30,000 to 40,000 fans.
And the intensity of the mourning was such that the family was eventually forced to hold an open casket viewing to dispel these persistent, morbid rumors that the casket was actually empty.
Her memory is physically preserved in Corpus Christi. In 1997, a museum dedicated to her life and a beautiful life-size bronze statue called the Mirador de la Flor were erected.
And both are still visited by hundreds of fans every single week.
Even a decade later, the power of her image remained immense. The 2005 tribute concert, Selena VIVE, achieved a record 35.9 household rating for a Spanish-language television special in U.S. history.
A truly shocking number, and in some key demographics, it even beat the ratings of American Idol that night.
And from the 1997 film starring Jennifer Lopez to the more recent Netflix series, her narrative continues to be told and retold. It demonstrates an enduring cultural resonance that shows absolutely no sign of diminishing, even 3 decades on.
So we've traced her journey from a Texan music pioneer who rose out of financial necessity to a cultural martyr whose murder spurred these monumental changes in how American media and the music industry represented and marketed to the Latino community.
Even if, ironically, it also meant the decline of the very genre that she spearheaded.
The final synthesis here is profound. A single act of betrayal and violence tragically exposed and amplified deep-seated cultural and racial divisions in the U.S., forcing a necessary, if painful, mainstream reckoning with the importance of Latino figures in American life.
And ultimately, the tragedy cemented Selena's place as an enduring symbol of possibility, hope, and pride for millions of people, a power she achieved far more fully in death than she was ever allowed to realize during her extraordinarily promising but tragically short life.
Thanks for listening.